Okay, Chair, when you're ready, we are now live on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Well, good morning, everyone. This is the Asset Management Forum meeting on Monday, the 4th of March, 2024. I am your chair, Councillor Paul Hayward. I'd like to also welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live stream. May I respectfully remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting, and that we also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who disrupts the meeting by whatever means. Please turn off any telephone devices or put them on silent. We'll now start the meeting by asking our DSO, Debbie, to do a roll call of forum members here present. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Let's start with yourself, Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott, please.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Present.
Thank you. I've had apologies from Councillor Hall, so we'll move on to Councillor Todd Olive.
Present.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I can confirm you are quorate.
Thank you very much indeed. So we'll move straight on to agenda item 1, notes of the previous meeting held on the 4th of December 2023. So as usual, if anyone has any comment on the notes, please do so by raising your electronic hand. If I see no hands raised, I will take this as an indication that you agree the notes of the previous meeting. Councillor Davey, hello. You have a hand raised.
I have. I presume I have won the prize for Spot the Deliberate Mistake. At the bottom of page 5, item 20, the portfolio overview. Portfolio property types are categorized as follows, and the second one down is cakes and kiosks. I'm just assuming the cakes, the K got a bit carried away there, and that should be cafes and kiosks.
Thank you. It wasn't a deliberate mistake, but...
Oh, come on, Debbie. I was hoping my prize was in the post.
Your winning prize of cake is in the post. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Noted, Chair. I'll make that amendment.
I'll have it at strategic planning tomorrow.
And thank you, Councillor Davey, for your eagle-eyed vigilance. So with that substantive change, changing cakes back to cafes, if anyone has no other objection, we will agree those notes as proceeding and accurate. Thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies, we've covered. Councillor Matt Hall is not with us. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. If any councillor has any declaration to make, please raise your electronic hand. This also applies to any member councillor here who may have a declaration to make on any item on this agenda. Right, if I go through the order, Councillor Barlow, good morning.
Good morning to you. Item 12, master plan for Hayne Lane. I don't know if it's I should declare it or not, but I know the manager of the garden centre, which is obviously right in the centre of that.
Lovely, thank you. And I also understand you're a member of Sidmouth Town Council, is that correct?
I am.
You are, thank you, in case that comes up at a later point. Ollie.
Exmouth, item 8, Exmouth placemaking. I'm a member of that committee as well, and an Exmouth Town Councillor. I think those would both be effects NRIs.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Jenny, morning.
Okay, here we are. 11 and 12, I think. I'm a Honiton District and Town Councillor.
Lovely. Will that be an effects NRI as well?
Yes.
Lovely. And then thank you. I'll come to you in a second, Tony, if I may. Nick?
Yes, no, I'm not a member of the committee, just the same as Ollie, really. Member of the Exmouth placemaking Town Seafront Group, and also an Exmouth Town Councillor, so it's an effects NRI. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, I'll come to Tony and then to Cherry.
Yeah, sorry, I can't find my hand to put up. So I was the same as Jenny, Honiton Town Councillor, please.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And again, an effects NRI?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And Cherry, good morning.
I'm a member of Exmouth Town Council, and I'm on their planning and placemaking and that.
Lovely. And again, I think we'll take that as read that that's an effects NRI. Thank you for those declarations. So thank you all. Agenda item 4, public speaking. I think all of us within this meeting are either officers or councillors. So there are no members of the public here and none registered to speak. So we can move to item 5. Matter of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There is one item which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way, which is listed on the agenda. So we will move into part B as per the Local Government Act. So we now move swiftly to agenda item 7, the Place and Prosperity Update. And we're joined by Alison Hayward. Good morning, Alison, who will present on this item.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. So we have a number of items I wanted to cover that are set out in the report that you've received. So first of all, the depots review. This is quite a significant piece of work for the service currently. We're looking at the street scene operations depots, but also the recycling and waste facility out at Greendale. And these, at these depots, obviously these are key activities relating to waste and other services. So for our street scene operations, we've got the tree service, events and beach safety. We've got our waste collection, street cleaning, operating out of Camperdown and Manston currently. So we're not only looking at facilities to ensure that the facilities are fit for purpose into the future, but also we have to consider the logistics and the day-to-day operation. So we've been doing quite a bit of work with colleagues in street scene, in the operations teams, to understand their day-to-day activities and the number of times they have to do certain tasks, which all affects logistics and the suitability of future locations for any depot. So with all of that information, we have been sharing that with our consultants, Sweco, and other and their consultant partners on this project. So we are currently in the position relating to the recycling and waste facility. That's the household recycling bins that we all leave out on our front gardens every week. So that collection, that all goes to Greendale. So we've been looking at a future mixed recycling facility. So that's the plant and machinery that would be required for processing that waste material. And the buildings and the site that would need to be housed in. So we're at the stage where we have a potential site layout, an indicative site layout to guide us on what would be required for that. So our consultants are now looking at costs of what that would cost to deliver. So that's where we are with our recycling and waste. And with the street scene operations, we're now at the stage of looking at how suitable it might be for us to reconsider using the existing sites, where we've got Manston in Sidmouth and we've got Camperdown in Exmouth. We've also looked at the Fear Park site and where might be suitable for those to be located within the district. So that's where quite crucially the logistics in particular comes into this, because obviously as a rural district, the locations are obviously quite dispersed. So we are hoping to be receiving a report in April, and then we will be bringing a report through to Cabinet in the first instance sometime in the summer. So that's our current position on the depots. I'm happy to take questions through Councillor Hayward if people want to at particular points before I move on to the next item.
Well, we thank you very much. We have 2 hands up. So from Nick and Councillor Barlow.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Alison, for the report. Yes, I particularly want to ask you about the Camperdown Terrace and Exmouth depot, because I'm very interested to know what future plans consultants are suggesting for this depot, because it is in a very interesting site. And as one who has for many years walked past this depot on the way down to either the seafront or the marina and so on, it does strike as being a place of considerable potential. Now, there have been a number of suggestions of what we could do with this site, and there are two main points really I'd like to get the committee to consider. Firstly, could the site benefit from investment? There seems to be a lot of use of ground space, whereas perhaps with some investment in new equipment, some of that space may be reused to better purpose and might be more efficient working. And secondly, the other point I'm trying to make is that because the site is so close to the marina, and Exmouth has a very healthy a marine sector anyway, lots of money gets splashed around on boats for no good reason, apart from the fact that people say they've got a boat, but that creates demand, and it would, I think, be quite a good site for small workshops aimed at the marine economy. So I'd just like to know what consultants are suggesting for the site, because I think it's a site with great potential. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before you come back on that, Alison, what I'll do is I'll ask the other members just to pop their observations in, if they can be kept as brief as possible, and then ask you to respond in a collective way, if that's okay. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just, obviously, we use consultants for this, which I understand, and I just wanted to know the brief to the consultants. When did it go out? And was there a date in there that they're aiming for? And are we ahead of schedule, behind? Just want to know where we are on that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alison's made a note of that question. Ollie.
Thank you. Very quick one. When we're looking at logistics and so on of the operations from those sites, are we considering mileage, both in terms of keeping our costs down, but also obviously our carbon footprint?
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just in relation to Camperdown Terrace, just interested to hear, I'm sure as Nick is as well, about how we're working internally within the organisation, crossing over into the placemaking. I'm sure we are, but I don't know the details on that. And the reason I mention that is that, as members will remember, we resolved at Cabinet only on Wednesday that we would reach out to town, and we've got Ollie here, and county, to try and get a closer working relationship in terms of Exmouth placemaking between the three authorities concerned. So I'm just wondering how Alison, and I suppose Jerry as well, feel about Camperdown Terrace and what its potential is to be included, and whether one of them could give a brief word on what the consultants said about it within the document that we were shown a couple of weeks ago. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Alison, so a selection of questions there, all slightly different. You could cover those perhaps?
Okay, yes, thank you. So in terms of the Camperdown site, we haven't asked the consultants at this stage to look specifically at what a future use might be. Our focus is on the depots and where the depot service needs to be. And it may well be that the Camperdown site has to be retained as depot use if an alternative can't be found, and if it is determined that there still needs to be a depot in Exmouth, for instance. So that would need to remain as an option. And in terms of alternate uses, then I think very much it would be, in terms of this report that the consultant are doing, it's left as a blank canvas really, because of that we would very much consider that then to be taken forward from the Exmouth placemaking perspective, and so not form part of this work, but form part of a future exercise. And I think then that would be when the different aspects that Councillor Hookway, Councillor Arnott alluded to would be picked up at that point. So hopefully that covers off those queries. In terms of the timings of this study, We went out to tender on this in early last summer through the appropriate procurement procedure for the consultants, and we had a selection process, and I think we had commenced with the consultants. It was I think October by the time we were commenced with the consultants, having completed that procurement. We are slightly behind on the schedule, and that's largely because of us gathering the information that we have needed to do, and working with our colleagues in Street Scene, where they were resource depleted for a while whilst they waited for their new Street Scene manager to arrive with the organisation late in the autumn time. So we are a little behind the schedule. So we had anticipated that we might have had a report from our consultants by January, February, but that's now going to be maybe the end of this month, but into April. So that's the position there. In terms of the logistics, yes, it's very important to consider the number of trips that are required, and as a result of that, and the distance of those trips, and as a result, the impact on our carbon footprint arising from that, as well as the officer time involved in driving to and back, to and from a depot with waste that's being collected from the seafront, either in Sidmouth or Exmouth, for instance. So that's very much forming part of the study. So hopefully that covers off those points. So I'm conscious of the time and my other colleagues and their reports. So I'm just going to pick up on a couple of the other items within the report.
Sorry, just before you
Yes.
I know Tim wants to come back in, but there was a question raised by Councillor Arnott, just seeking clarification that the PETS group and also the three authorities were liaising with the consultant. So the consultant knows they have to discuss with three different authorities, so they're not operating in a silo effectively.
Okay, yes, just on that point, Councillor Hayward, I thought I'd covered that off earlier on, but this study that we're doing isn't going to look at the future use of this site in any detail. So that would be, if the Camperdown site were to become available, then that exercise would be taken up through the PETS group, I would imagine, to consider, and then working with others as appropriate, with the appropriate consultants to look at uses, etc., in a normal feasibility study for that. Hopefully that covers that.
And I took from that also, whatever we do in Exmouth, because of the issues that have arisen recently with parking, that I suppose it's keeping an open mind that wherever possible we should try and engage with, because even the issues of using it in the future as a depot, that creates noise, that creates nuisance, that creates traffic movements. And as long as we're liaising with the Highways Authority, because it's their roads, and we're liaising with the local councils because it's their residents, that's what I took from that it's always asking the question. We can't compel them to respond to us, but we can always try and include them in anything that affects them to sort of significant degree. In Exmouth, you have two depots, and all residents will be affected by it. But thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. No, understood. Yeah. Okay. I will pick that up with the consultants and with our colleagues in Street Scene. Yeah.
And Tim, you wanted to come in?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, the report makes this clear, but I just wanted to pick up that this is as much a Street Scene operational project as it is a property project. We, through Alison's team, are leading on it. But it is, at this stage, about what the operational requirements are for Street Scenes. So in terms of carbon footprint, in terms of where staff live, in terms of what they need in terms of office space, looking more widely, for example, across Exmouth, around our office space, Exmouth Town Halls as well. So it's around our operational requirements. The conclusion of this piece of work will then set out what the council, what the best fit moving forward for the council is, and then it will be from that recommendation or conclusion that will then inform what happens with our existing sites. So, for example, as Alison said, with Camperdown, that would then come bluntly, either stays a depot, maybe a reduced size depot, or it becomes surplus. And if it becomes surplus, then it would absolutely be picked up through Jerry's placemaking work, and it would be that latter stage that would really involve the wider partners, so the town council and the county council. At this stage, it is very much our operational needs. But picking up on the point made earlier, I think Alison will pick up again with Devon County and Exmouth Town Council, which I think we've had those early discussions anyway, because clearly we need to factor in what their needs are. So if the town council were to come to us and say, well, actually, operationally, our depot provision up at Fear Park would be better off at Camperdown, and obviously we can factor that into our design solution. And in terms of Devon County, we have had some early discussions with Devon County to look at whether there are opportunities to share depot space, because actually the best fit for East Devon as a locality would probably be more partnership working and facilities, rather than us all having our own facilities and spending an awful lot of public money on them.
Thank you. I mean, that ties back to the one public estate issue that we've touched on many times here. So, Paul, do you want to come back in briefly?
Yeah, really briefly. Thanks, Alison, and thanks, Tim, for the sort of the broader view as well. You can imagine that, I think as far as the placemaking is concerned, although I understand this is street scene and that it's assets who are leading on that, I totally get it. But placemaking is up and running. So I'm just trying to see what a timescale is for when we might have some clarity about what Tim was just talking about. Are we looking at 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? Because I think we need to have an understanding of that in order for, for example, we don't want to embarrass him, in order for Jerry to be able to move ahead with his work as well, so to speak. In other words, if we spend a year considering to depot or not to depot, that is the question, that's a year lost where we might be able to be moving on with another solution. If it's 6 months to do that, I can see that makes sense, but that would be helpful if Tim knows the answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alison, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, just to respond, in the first instance, we'll have a first report coming to Cabinet this summer, which will indicate and allow Cabinet to consider the outcome of the feasibility study and what we think is an appropriate way forward, taking into account, I think, as Tim said, that this is about the operational needs of the council and the cost of providing those services and the facilities for those services. So that will give an initial indication of and enable Cabinet to consider, well, where do these facilities need to be located? And from there, we'll then know, okay, we have some sites we can now look to do a placemaking scheme on those sites, or we may have to retain those sites for depots. Hopefully that's helpful.
It is. Thank you, Alison. Obviously, if we could task you or ask you to just continue liaising with your street scene colleagues, and then if anything, if there is any slippage, perhaps come back through myself and Councillor Young, whose portfolio it is, and then we'll liaise and assist wherever we can to make sure that everything sort of dovetails nicely together. So thank you. Sorry, in that case, I'll back to you, Alison.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am conscious of time. So just very briefly, item 2 relates to the public toilets on the Esplanade in Sidmouth and the Drill Hall site, which members will know that Rockfish are considering, and there is a planning application being considered by the LPA for this site now. So to confirm, we have entered into an agreement for lease with Rockfish and for the disposal of the toilet site to them, that is conditional upon them securing that planning permission. So we're still awaiting, and the local planning authority is still dealing with an outstanding consultation with the Environment Agency, and it's likely they'll be seeking some further information from Rockfish, which can be sent to the Environment Agency for further consultation. So we're not yet at the time when this can go to a planning committee. So that was the one item. And just quickly, the other one is just to mention the Seaton Morridunham site that remains with our agent, and there is some continuing interest in that site, and we're looking for, if parties wish to make a bid, that we'll have a bid around the 20th of March, the deadline, and we'll then take it forward with members thereafter. So I'll conclude there. Happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, very quickly. I just wonder if this is, I realise there are problems with Rockfish and the Environment Agency, but I just wonder if this is a possibility that we should be looking at the toilet provision at that end of the seafront, because we do have issues. I believe the Sidmouth Town Council Planning Committee wasn't over thrilled, shall we say, with the new application for the toilet block at the swimming pool. And I just wonder if this was a time that perhaps with Rockfish's problem with the possible flooding issues there, that perhaps something could be done at this stage before it's too late. I sort of know what the answer is going to be, but I just thought I ought to say it.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, Alison, I'll allow you to respond on that front.
I think at this point, the designs are what they are. We have spent a great deal of time in negotiating and discussing with Rockfish and getting to this point in terms of the offer. We've considered for some time now that the toilet facilities that they will offer there are self-contained. You don't have to go into the restaurant to use them. They'll be standalone and 2 toilets, fully accessible. And in discussion with our street scene colleagues, that was thought to be sufficient. And so I think operationally, I would recommend that we leave it at that point for now, and let the planning application proceed, because otherwise there'd be further amendments required as well.
Thank you. I take your point, Councillor Barlow. I think the danger of conflating 2 separate toilet facilities and making one reliant on another, you end up in the cyclical argument that you just got to proceed as we are. The issue of the Ham facility is being worked through with our colleagues, as will be covered later. Tim.
Thank you. I think the pertinent thing is the Port Royal site wasn't a Category A site, so therefore it was decided as part of a toilet review that it wasn't Category A, wouldn't be invested by EDDC. Clearly there's an agreement for lease with Rockfish. Either the planning gets resolved and that proceeds. If not, then we would revert back to looking at other tenants to run a toilet, but it wouldn't be as a Category A, it would be a Category B or C.
Thank you very much, Tim. So thank you very much, Alison, for your report. I don't see any other hands up. So can I ask members of the forum, if you are happy to, I'll propose from the chair that we note the report. If all members are in favour, if you could just raise your hands, electronic or otherwise, and I'll take that as agreement. Thank you. That's a tick from Todd. And all 3, there we are. We have all 3 variants. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so thank you very much for that, Alison. We now move on to agenda item 8, the Exmouth placemaking update. And on that, we will pass over. Oh, Paul, you've got your hand up. Is that?
That's my former vote, Chair.
Oh.
So I'll take it now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so agenda item 8. We have the Exmouth placemaking update, and we have a report from Mr. Jerry Mills. Jerry, over to you. Good morning.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Debbie. Chair, very, very short report because it really is a reiteration of the information that's already in the public domain and presented to the placemaking group. So The Exmouth placemaking plan is now really in its draft final form. We're just going to carry out a short consultation because we did give an undertaking to do that. Really, from our point of view, it's a little bit of slippage on time, just to perhaps preempt a question from Ian, but that was actually down to the time it took to get the contract put in place. We're now really in the democratic process of the various meetings that have to take place. So this will go from the placemaking group onward to back to placemaking, then onward to cabinet and to full council. I'm happy to take any questions. I wasn't proposing to go through the presentation for you because it's already out there in the public domain. I'm trusting that that's okay. Just by way of a general update, just we have all 5 leases for the traders at Queen's Drive now underway with legal services, and we have a provider for the events space, which is the area to the rear where the traders normally sit at Queen's Drive. We have sacrificed the fitness area to help support the work of our engineers in regard to the seawalls, as they need that for some use. So we're just in discussion with LED in relation to that. The Levelling Up Fund bid, bless their cotton socks, Devon County Council are still pursuing that. It's due to go to planning shortly. People will have their say. I appreciate that it's not got universal agreement. Really, from our point of view, unless we have a formal stated position on it, I can't really go into any more detail than that. Bearing in mind, of course, that Devon County Council are the lead. Colliford Road, Axminster, just to emphasise that site isn't yet in our ownership, but is due to be transferred from Vistry, used to be known as Bovis Homes.
Sorry, Jerry, this is Cloakham Lawns, not Colliford Road.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I beg your pardon. I have the wrong title on it. I do apologise, Chair. I will amend that. Yeah, Cloakham Lawns. Please forgive me. That's quite a schoolboy error. Okay. I've pointed Urban Dynamics. They've actually completed the piece of work, but it was too tight to get it to this meeting, so it will come through to you in June with the appropriate title on it, of course. The reason for the for pursuing this and spending quite a small sum of money on the consultants was that because of the Section 106 agreement, unless we have a serious plan for this, under the Section 106 agreement, that could revert back to Vistry's ownership, and we would actually lose the site because of the delay in bringing it forward. So we're working on the deed of variation with legal services, and I hope to bring that forward to you in June for more detailed discussion. Chair, that's basically just a recommendation to you that you would note the report. It's not for anything further, and I do apologise again. I'll certainly make that amendment. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Tim, is there anything you want to add on this before we know?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to pick up on one thing. I think for me, the key slide in all of this was the investment and funding strategy slide. So it's basically, look, we are here with the placemaking. How do we make this happen? And for me, that's having got to this stage. And it's taken an awfully long time to get to this stage with various different iterations, many, many years. Having got to this stage, it's now about how we move it across to delivery. And it's around the project, around what we can lead on. But clearly, if we are leading on things, then there is a significant, very heavy financial burden of doing so. But equally, and possibly more importantly, it's around how we can act as a facilitator to leverage in funding and enthusiasm and appetite from the private sector. So more of this will come out through the next placemaking group, but it is sort of now we've sort of got to where we are. Now it's around delivery, and delivery is not straightforward. It takes a lot of money, and I think the solution to this is the council taking its role in all of this, but also working with others, whether they be tenants of ours on our land, or whether they be private businesses generally in Exmouth and more widely, to give them the confidence to invest their money in Exmouth placemaking. So really, I just wanted to sort of pick up on that, if you don't mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Just before I go to you, Paul, good morning, Peter. Lovely to see you here. Do you have any declarations of interest to make, Peter?
No.
No, thank you very much. Just to clarify. Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Tim and Jerry. So I'm really delighted we've got to where we are with this and with this document. And I'm just going to, in 30 seconds, say why it's crucially important. First of all, it sets a route map moving forward, but critically, in being so transparent, it will help us avoid the terrible mistakes of the past. Now, I'm not going to get the violin out and play a load of old tunes, but all of us will know that on Wednesday we have an urgent council item where we're going to be asked to spend the best part of £1.5 million shoring up the seawall by sideshore. And that does beg questions, which I suspect on Wednesday people will say, all scrutiny need to look at it. How in the past somebody thought that was a great idea to build there and to spend our money on a road there when it was so obviously a place that was likely to be repeatedly storm damaged. And it now is, and the bill is coming in. So that's the past. We will need to look into that because we must make a clean breast of that. But pushing that entirely to one side, how this current project has been formulated and worked on by Jerry and Tim and the assets team means that I don't think we will have any danger of making mistakes like that again. Okay, this is now fully, as Jerry has just said, it's basically coming right into the democratic realm now. Consultation will go on. People of Exmouth can be secure that decisions are being made are wise ones based on evidence rather than optimistic ones in the hope that storms won't happen at a time of global warming on Exmouth seafront. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Ian.
Thank you. Well, just following on from that, we were talking about 1.1 million on Wednesday, but really it's 3.3 million because we've obviously got to do the other bit as well. And then on top of that, there's nearly...
I think it might be more than that, Ian, by the time we've done the whole front. But yes, yeah, we don't know. But yeah.
But then going back to the what I would call things that perhaps you need to, when you're going out for your public consultation, you might want to put in the consultation. You have choices. And certainly the cladding, an extra £1 million, give or take, by the time you've got your risk factors in there, etc. I just wonder whether you should be giving that as a choice to your public in Exmouth and say, is it necessary to clad the front edge of it, which is only visible really from the beach? And should you be saving that £1 million and putting that into allowing your placemaking, £1 million to put in there, that you could then put with the private purse, whatever, and say that we are investing £1 million for our money rather than on cladding. It's a choice that the Exmouth people have made. They would rather see the bigger picture progress rather than it just looking with stone on the front. And I realise that it will be something, but that's the sort of thing to me that the public should be consulted on.
Thank you, Ian. I think I've got two other speakers. Myself, I think that's a conversation. We are having an extraordinary meeting on Wednesday, and that is a full council meeting. So obviously it's beholden on all members to bring their views and opinions and comments and observations to that meeting and discuss it at that point. Councillor Young and then Councillor Ockway.
Yeah, I take Ian's point on the cost of the seawall protection. I think we should be looking at that separately from the any other plans for Exmouth. We don't know how much funding we're going to be getting from DEFRA. We don't know. Now it's in the future, and hopefully we will get quite a bit of funding from DEFRA for this. So I don't think we should be including it in the seafront, or else we're going to be spending everything on the wall and nothing on anything else. Keep the two items as separate as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, Ian does raise an interesting point, but The issue in Exmouth is really related to the seawall and the beach, and there is a new beach management plan going ahead now, which is long overdue in my view, and hopefully will address the situation, because if we have a beach that is raised and fully up against the seawall is likely to be protected. In terms of consultation, there has been a consultation, and Exmouth residents have been shown plans and so on. That was a very attended event, and I think a lot of people are very keen in having the cladding at the front. But again, we need to take that further. But it is a complex issue. I absolutely agree with Councillor Young. It's not. We don't need to mix placemaking and the seawall together. What we do need to do is to think very carefully about the seawall and how to improve and raise the level of the beach. But that, of course, is for another committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hookway. We have received a report there. If there's no other speakers on that, and thank you, Jerry, for presenting, and thank you, Tim, for the extra information, I'll propose from the chair that we note that report. And if I could have members' support for noting. Is that a yes from you, Ollie? Thank you very much. So that's unanimous. Thank you. So now we move on to agenda item 9, the Property and FM team update. Today we have a verbal report from Assistant Director, Placement Assets and Commercialisation, Tim Child. Tim, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. George, I've got to get this guy again. George has been bogged down dealing with toilets over the last couple of months. I had to get that in, so apologies for that. It's sounding better in my mind and probably just sounded reading it out aloud. But no, joking aside. So George has spent the majority of his time in the last couple of months dealing with the Public Toilets Project and the Category A works. Whilst we've put a lot of the work out to Kendall King Scott, it still requires a lot of internal officer time to deal with it. George is also on a week's well-earned leave this week. So in light of those two issues together, I agreed with him that I'd just provide a very brief verbal update rather than the full written report. Having said that, George is keen that the next AMF report or AMF meeting isn't until June. And what George proposed is that we will circulate an update to AMF members on some of the key data that George normally to report on, just so that you have that confidence that things are still going well within the team, rather than having to wait until June. Just a couple of things that George wanted me, or two things that George wanted me to particularly pick up on. Arguably, the most important area of work for this team is landlord health and safety compliance work. We report on that quarterly. We were at 92% compliance. Back at December's AMF, our KPI for that is actually 90%, so we were above that. We were above our own standards, but we're at 92%. I'm delighted to report that we are currently at 97%, which I think is the highest we've been at since we've been recording this. The second, and linked to health and safety compliance, this will be of interest to AMF members. We have a SWAP audit on compliance during 2024/25, just trying to finalise timescales, but over the next 12 months there will be a SWAP audit. Indeed, there was one probably about 2 years ago. And the second area was capital projects, all going as planned. The biggie has been the one at the Pavilion, Exmouth Pavilion, and a number of members will recall concerns raised previously by LED over the impact that the works would have on the LED operation at that building. Had a meeting with Peter Gilpin, Chief Executive of LED, and his colleagues only, I think it was last Monday. And he and colleagues reported back that the works they're almost concluded now, had gone extremely smoothly. So that was reassuring to hear. So I think that's it really in terms of George's update. And as I said, we will, in the course of the next couple of weeks, circulate a written update to AMF members. Happy as best as I'm able to take questions on behalf of George.
Thank you, Tim. It's always very appreciated by members to receive those reports. George puts a lot of time into them, and they're very helpful information for us. So if they could be sent out prior to the next AMF, I'd be very grateful. Councillor Barlow, over to you.
Sorry, very simple, very new boy question. What's a swap audit?
Southwest Audit Partnership, SWAP. It's basically our internal audit. And through SWAP and our executive leadership team, they agree an audit forward plan based on where our key risks exist within the organisation, and obviously health and safety compliance equally within housing as well as within non-housing is obviously a biggie. Hence, we tend to review SWAP tend to review it every couple of years. Hopefully, that answers that question.
I presume that takes up quite a lot of officer time doing that.
Yeah, yes, but yeah, can't avoid that. It depends what the scope of the audit is. We've still got to define what the scope will be, specifically what will be looked at. Having said it takes quite a lot of time, it's a good opportunity for someone external to come in and look at how we are doing things. And yes, it takes time, but normally it comes up with some good ideas on how we can do things differently moving forward. And also, what's really important, SWAP, so Southwest Audit Partnership, they are the internal auditors of large numbers of other local authorities, particularly sort of in the wider Southwest. I think they are, Southwest Audit Partnership within the wider Southwest. So we learn from best practice. So they may come back to us and say, well, you do it like this within East Devon. We've seen other authorities doing it this way, and we think there would be benefits of adopting a similar approach. So yeah, it takes time, but it is a valuable exercise.
Thank you. Context, my first SME employer had 2 full-time members of staff just doing health and safety. My latter public or private sector corporate employer, I think had over 500 people doing health and safety across the entire organisation. They were a multi-billion organisation. So it takes time and effort, and it never ends, especially as legislation changes. Out of interest, Councillor Barlow, you may want to review audit and governance. Audit and governance agendas are a good source of a good point to start for SWAP audits, and you will soon lose yourself hours and hours and weeks of reading SWAP audits and reports, because each report has a sub-report and each report has a sub-report, and so on and so forth. It's fascinating, but it's a huge amount of data.
If I get bored counting sheep, I will certainly do that. Thank you.
Even the sheep would be interested. I'll never say bored. It's very interesting. So thank you for the question. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tim, for the verbal report on that. Much appreciated. We don't need to do anything else on that. We can't really note the verbal report. So now, without further ado, I can't see any other hands. We'll move to agenda item 10, the estates team update. And over to you, Rob. Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, just a fairly straightforward and hopefully self-explanatory run through of just some of the activity and sort of updates in terms of the estates team activity. So we start off with just a bit of information about the performance of the portfolio, which remains good. We have limited voids and improving improving rental income through the various sort of lease renewals and rent reviews that we undertake. As I think we've probably touched on before, we've been doing a bit of work in terms of seasonal matters. So Jerry mentioned the Queen's Drive space leases, which have all been agreed and solicitors instructed. So it's always a busy time of the year in terms of everything suddenly burst into life sort of January, February time, when people suddenly realise that Easter's bearing down on them and they want to get things up and running on the seafront by Easter. So we've had a busy few months with some of those agreements. So everything seems to be in place for those. And at the same time, we've also had quite a big piece of work that's ongoing with the council's asset valuations. So an annual piece of work that is very important, but obviously it takes up a lot of officer time in terms of undertaking those valuations. Quite a significant revaluation program that we do but is quite useful to our finance team in terms of their sort of overall sort of statement of accounts. So and then in terms of the ongoing, we've had a long run issue with the workload of the team. That continues to improve, so we're gradually chipping away at the amount of cases that we've got, and the more inroads we make into that, obviously it frees up officer time to really sort of get their teeth into some of the bigger cases and things like that. So that's a positive movement. We've also rolled out sort of green lease clauses within our leases. This was one of our service plans objectives previously, and we've now got those rolled out as standard in our new lease agreements. They basically just encourage sort of better sharing of information, access to properties and things like that for undertaking works, and just generally provisions for trying to improve the performance environmentally of our portfolio. So we're hopefully meeting a lot of our objectives in regards to our leased out properties. And then just finally, in terms of our community asset transfer process, we've received an application from Bia Parish Council, which it's in the early stages still, but we've started the consultation process with sort of internal officers, ward members, and such like, and then there'll be a report coming forward to the next asset management forum, which will obviously have a bit more detail in terms of how we think we should progress with that one, and that'll obviously be led by the consultation exercise. So that's the run through of the estates team. So happy with any questions that anyone's got.
Thank you. Just before I come to Councillor Barlow, so thank you very much, Rob, for that. It's really heartening to see essentially good news after good news after good news there, particularly in credit where it's due. And I appreciate your team's had some resource issues, but item 5 on your report, to go from 350 to below 250, and I know you're working to keep that going down, and there will always be live issues simply because of the nature of our estates, but I think it should be recognised as a great achievement because it directly impacts on our tenants. Item 7, I know that yourself and the play team had some interaction the other day. It must have been a very slow news day when the eyes of the national press were turned on Beer Clifftop Play Park about slides and swings and everything else. But thank you for you and the team for putting East Devon in a positive light. So thank you very much indeed. Councillor Barlow, over to you.
Thank you very much. Rob, through you, Chair. I think from the last time I remember you'd just taken on a few more surveyors, whatever, which I think you was hoping was going to bring your team up to almost full capacity. Are you there yet? And just so I understand, because I know there's other places, other departments in the council that need surveyors. Do we ever sort of share them out? I know you probably want to keep hold of them. But is it something? So I noticed we passed a 71,000 amount of 71,000 to use surveyors for selling off the category B toilets. And I just wondered if there was anything we could have done to perhaps make the money go further, if you like, and use some of your surveyors for that 71,000, seeing as it wasn't a full-time position. It might have been easier. I'm sure Tim is waiting to come in and tell me why that's not possible. But are you happy now that you are up to speed and that at the end of the day, making better use of our internal resources would save us and be beneficial for the council?
So yeah, I mean, in terms of the vacant posts that we previously had, yes, we have them all filled now, so we don't have any vacant posts. So without sort of boring you too much, we went through a phase after a few people had left where essentially I was the only surveyor that we had in the team. So it kind of anything that required professional input had to go through me, which obviously made life particularly difficult. But yeah, we now have have effectively all of our posts filled. Could could we find work for more people? Obviously we could, but I'm sure that's the same the world over. Kind of the workload will never go away. So we're always going to be busy in terms of what we've got, and obviously the demands that come forward. So yeah, I mean, it's in terms of other services. I mean, we undertake work for our housing colleagues, so we do things like right to buy valuations for them. We do assist where they need sort of valuation input and things like that. So yeah, we assist in with other services, but obviously we pretty much, in terms of what we've got, we are pretty much working at capacity, I would say now.
Thank you, Rob. Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, just adding to what Rob said firstly about housing. So yeah, we cover the areas Rob's talked about. We've also been assisting the Housing Task Force over the last 6 months in terms of sort of helping sort of upskill there where needed in terms of technical surveying input. And we will continue to do so. I believe the Housing Task Force area is growing itself now anyway. But we'll obviously continue to provide that support where needed and work closely alongside them. Obviously, a very similar skill set between their surveyors moving forward and our estates team. In terms of the 71k, Councillor Barlow, so that's you're right. It's for a part-time role for a period of 12 months. Funded from a transformation reserve to specifically get, I think it's about 15 odd sites across the line by the deadline of 31st of March 2025. We did, obviously, as we always would, looked at how we could resource it internally first. Had we done so, it would have had massive implications on Rob's. It would have had, well, two things. It would have had massive implications on Rob's team. You'd have seen that number of live projects go back up and other important projects therefore not happen. But it also wouldn't have provided that dedicated resource. Now with Doug, who's our interim agency surveyor, who's dealing with the toilet transfers, 3 days a week, but he's dedicated to toilets. There's about 15 sites, but believe they generate an awful amount of work, and it's not the sort of work that you could have easily absorbed amongst wider estates work.
Thank you, Tim. I think also as a takeout from that, it demonstrates that within East Devon, as with most organisations, everyone is just trying to help everyone else. But we're under-resourced, we don't have enough money, and so everyone chips in where they can. And if we can share that technical expertise for a day, for a week, it just helps the business as a whole. So thank you, Rob, for your report. It's very heartening to know. It's very positive. Thank you, Tim, for your extra information. I don't see any other hands up, no queries from members or colleagues outside of the forum. So I'll propose from the chair that we note that report for the minutes. Are all members of the forum happy to do so? To nod, thumbs up. Yeah, I think that's a yes. So thank you very much, Debbie, if you can record that. One day we will all have a consistent approach, whether we all just stick our thumb up or we all leap for the button, which does seem to move around on a regular basis. So that was agenda item 10. We now move to agenda item 11, the public toilets update. And this is presented by Tim. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so yeah, high-level update on current position following the Cabinet decisions in early January. I think, as we touched on already, it has created, it has generated a huge amount of work, both in terms of the estates type work. So that is through Doug, who I've just mentioned in the last item. He's our interim resource. So Doug's role is currently focused mainly on parish and town councils. Within the timeline agreed by Cabinet back in January, we needed towns and parishes to either agreed heads of terms or not agreed and withdrawn from the process by the 31st of March this year. So to enable then a transfer to take place no later than 31st of March next year, with unconditional contracts being in place no later than the 30th of June this year, if that makes sense. There's a massive amount of upfront work over basically from January through to June needed there. So that's where a lot of Doug's time is being spent. We will, however, very shortly then be moving over, as per that timeline agreed by Cabinet, to focusing then on commercial lettings, initially with a toilet provision. And then if we're unsuccessful there, then it will be a disposal without a toilet provision. At that stage, that third stage, if all else has failed, it is likely to be an auction in all likelihood. So lots of work, and that would then be happening sort of late summertime. So there's an awful lot of work going on there. And also with the property and FM team, so being led by George. And this is in relation to the category A investment works. The focus at the moment almost entirely is on the 5 category A phase 1 sites that are being rolled out this summer. As I said earlier, whilst we've instructed Kendall King Scott, and they are doing a great job through them and through various different sub-consultants through them, they still need close clienting. There still needs to be a very good, very firm steer provided by East Devon in terms of what we need to deliver out of this. So that's taking a lot of time. And then also, I'm probably more involved in this at the moment than I ever planned to be a couple of months ago. So yeah, generating an awful lot of work. So in terms of the report itself, it covers in a little detail, not a huge amount of detail, the cost of the category A investment programme, but that particular issue is part of a cross-party politically balanced members working group, which we have now agreed membership of, and invites will be sent out in the next day or so to get a meeting ready for probably mid-March, maybe middle to late March. Prior to, and a number of councillors in this meeting are part of that portfolio holder working group. In advance of that meeting, there will be a Part B, so a confidential briefing note issued, which will include, amongst other documents, the report that Kendall King Scott provided tail end of last year regarding the cost projections, and the document that was shared with Councillor Hayward as portfolio holder back in I think January. What I would, however, say now in terms of costs is, yes, the cost projection has gone up, but actually, if you look at the rate per square metre, that is pretty much as per the estimate that we provided back in 2021. What has changed since then? We've obviously had build cost inflation, but as I said, the rate per square metre is broadly the same now as it was then. So actually, that cost effectively has come down. But the size of the facilities has increased, and the reason it's increased is because that relates to the number of cubicles we're providing, all of the accessibility functionality that we're providing, which was all the things that came out of the toilet review itself and the consultation that took place back in 2021. And in terms of, I suppose, costs, but also in terms of the approach that we've taken more generally since 2021, it's all entirely consistent with the content and recommendations from that May 2021 Cabinet report, along with the adopted principles to the toilet review itself. I think there were, let me just pull it up, there were principles A to H, which related to charter standard access, numbers of facilities per town, coastal areas needing, in some instances, more facilities and different types of facilities, proximity, community needs, and also around design, hygienic design, at that time COVID secure design. Now, whilst we've hopefully moved on from COVID, actually the need for hygienic facilities moving forward is, I think, equally important now as forever. And I think the whole mindset of people when they use public toilets has very much changed in recent years in terms of what they expect. The report goes on to set out our timescales for building out phase 1 of the Category A investment works. Those sites will be built out this summer. From April through to probably July, August time. When I say April, main work starting post-Easter, you'll be pleased to hear. However, there will be some mobilisation works and site prep works that will start kicking in from the very end of March. But obviously, we've been very keen to make sure that that Easter, which for a lot of our coastal towns is actually the busiest time of the year, which was interesting. I always assumed that it would be the summer, but I'm told by my operational colleagues that no, it tends to be the Easter break. We obviously wanted those toilet facilities to be available. We are looking at temporary facilities. Details are still being finalised, but we're working very closely with Street Scene, so the operational colleagues, in terms of what facilities are best, where they will be sited and how they will be maintained, and the types of facilities with numbers, but also the types regarding disabilities and similar. In terms of tendering, the groundworks are being tendered at the moment, and the modular build contract will be going out to tender at the end of March. We have already included on the forward plan a key decision to be made regarding award of contracts, the first being for the groundworks towards the end of March, and the portfolio holder working group will take place in advance of that to properly consider all of the information available, which will then obviously inform how we move forward. So I think that's Category A investment works. In terms of the Category B and C transfers, as I said, focus is not entirely but largely on at the moment on parish and town councils. We're still awaiting decisions from both Budleigh, Salterton and Honiton town councils. Obviously, I don't know what those outcomes are going to be, what those decisions are going to be. But what I would say is that I know that the proposals have been much better received this time around. We've had some really, really good discussions with both of those councils, and I'm really pleased that both are asking some really pertinent but really, really good questions, which gives me confidence that both councils are really looking at this in detail. So yeah, we should get decisions from them over the coming weeks, certainly by the end of March. In terms of Exmouth, we've had feedback from the town clerk regarding the sites that we'd initially put to them. The only site that we are still talking about with Exmouth is the station toilet site next to the M&S and the train station, and trying to get a meeting set up for Doug and I with the town council clerk, ideally for later this week, to look at that particular site as a particularly unusual one. Likewise, Collerton, continuing positive discussions with Collerton. They had already reached a decision, I think it was tail end of last year, that they wish to proceed. So we're continuing those discussions, firming up the real detail with them now, and also having discussions in Seaton regarding the two sites in Seaton, not with the town council but with another, because those discussions were already taking place prior to January's cabinet. And likewise, continuing the discussions with the interested party at Walcombe Point in Exmouth. So yeah, lots of work going on there. I'm happy to take questions, but with, please, if you don't mind, a caveat that in terms of the costings, this will be subject to the member working group and the confidential briefing notes. So if there's anything high level, obviously happy to answer that now, but what I don't really, because that will be a Part B item effectively, what I don't really want to do is get into massive detail in this Part A item, if that's okay with others.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you for the comprehensive nature of that report. We have a question from Councillor Hookway and then from Jenny.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Not a question from me, actually, a moment of praise regarding paragraph 1.2 of the report, the changing places, toilets, facilities. I have to say I'm very pleased that these are going ahead. There has been considerable demand for this type of toilet. We've had official requests for these through the tourism network meetings that we've been running as part of the tourism strategy. I'm very pleased to receive that the extension requests from the Department of whatever have gone through. So I'd really like to place on record my thanks to officers for their hard work in achieving this, because this will be a significant improvement in our tourism provision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. I think that's asked Debbie to note that in the minutes formally. Thank you very much for making that comment. It's I can only agree. Jenny, hello.
Just a quickie to Tim. Have we had the new figures that the clerk was asking for Huntingdon Town Council for the toilets? Because we've got him getting the agenda together at the moment by Wednesday, and I think it's quite important we have up-to-date current information.
Over to you, Tim.
Yeah, Jenny, we had an email from the town council clerk this morning, just before this meeting, saying, look, I need the information by close of play tomorrow. So he's giving us close of play tomorrow. You're saying it might actually be Wednesday. But since then, Street Scene have already this morning gone back to him to clarify some information. So we are providing all of the information we are able to provide, ready for that timeline. There is some other information which the town council have asked, which for very good reason we're not able to provide, and I've gone back to the clerk to explain why we can't provide it. But yeah, no, we're aware of the deadline, and we've provided an awful lot of information tail end of last week, but there's a few other snippets that are still. I see Simon Kennedy has sent something through only this morning, so yes, yeah, he's going to have it all.
Thank you, Tim. Is that okay, Jenny?
Yeah, Tony and myself copied in on these. Might be an idea.
There's been probably 20 or 30 emails. There's been a lot of detail. Obviously, if there were issues arising from that, we would have obviously copied you in, but a lot of it's just sort of standard information to feed into the clerk for preparing his report, which obviously you'll get to see. Do you want? I can ask Doug to just provide a sort of more general update to ward members, if you like.
Thank you, Tim. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you for that. I do remember reading in the space-making Exmouth plans that proposals for more loos to be put on Exmouth seafront and other places in Exmouth. And I'm disappointed that it would seem that we're going to be closing some loos in Exmouth in the next year or so. So we're going to get a lot of negative comments from residents on that. How are we going to overcome that? Thank you.
Tim, do you want to come back on that? I mean, I think that's perhaps a bigger question for the council, maybe, because this isn't a surprise. We've been working towards this. This is a policy decision. And I take your point, Jeff. You know, no one likes to see toilets closed, but where we are is the hard reality of where we are. Tim, anything further to add to that?
I think, as you said, Chair, it was a policy decision. So the decision was reached in terms of categorisation. These are the category A's, these are categories B's and C's. I think you're right in terms of sort of public perception. I think once the public see our new facilities, I think they will understand that there was a significant need for massive investment, and we simply couldn't afford to do that massive investment in all of our toilets, which is why we've had to categorise the sites. Having said that, whilst we are building, or removing the existing toilets and then building new toilets, that's not going to come without inconvenience to the public, inconvenience to surrounding businesses, and we acknowledge that. But that's the same in any build project. We've looked very carefully at timing of these projects. The reality is 3 out of 5 of these phase 1 sites are seafront locations. So some might say, well, summer is the worst time to do it, but equally, could you really work on an exposed seafront? You take Seaton Westwall, you take Budleigh, even Foxholes in Exmouth during the depths of winter. Not really. So it is. It's going to be important that we communicate the messages right. So in terms of temporary facilities, in terms of signage to other facilities, and to do the best we can to take members of the public with us. We've already talked to our consultants about signage in terms of showing what these new facilities are going to look like. So rather than just looking at a fence around a site that's being removed, being able to see some sort of visuals of what this will look like. And I'm also working closely already with Beth in our communications team to make sure that we are prepping proactive comms on all of this. Bearing in mind that, of course, it's gone to AMF today, which is a public meeting.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jeff, for your question. Ian, over to you. Oh, you're on mute, Ian.
Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without that. I'm not going to go into the what I believe, and I think I'm on record of saying I think this is a biblically expensive way of doing it. However, that I know, as Tim has said, is coming up in our as soon as practical to get a group together, which has been 3 months now, so it's becoming less relevant, obviously, by the time we get there, because most of this will be done for this group. 2 things. First of all, I didn't see Sidmouth mentioned at all. I've got Honiton, Exmouth, Colleton, Seaton, as to your negotiations with the Town Council on that. Yeah, so that's. I just wanted to know if you are happy with the way Sidmouth is going along, if you've got them there, and also with the reputation of this council. At the end of the day, if you're offering these toilets to the town councils at zero cost or £1 cost, then surely it's almost we've shared the love, we pushed it down, and at the end of the day, if they don't want to take them on, they don't think there's a need. And there is, that's not really it's not our problem, but then certainly it should come down and fall on the town council to making that decision as to whether they think it is that important to lose toilets in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. I think it's a valid point. Certainly if we were in Somerset, where that authority has pretty much abrogated all of its responsibilities down to the town and parish councils, and they're all making precept adjustments now to reflect that, and those authorities will decide. But we're not Somerset. We're trying to retain as much as we can with the points you've raised in mind. Tony, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This one for Tim through yourself, Chair. Tim, we have to speak briefly about it, but obviously my concern regarding Lace Walk replacement toilets is vandalism. I suspect Lace Walk is probably the most vandalised toilets in East Devon, I suspect. Is there plans to actually put a CCTV system to protect Lace Walk, as we discussed the other week, or have you thought of that yet? Tim.
Back to you, Tim.
Okay. I'll answer all of those questions. I'll start with Councillor McCullum, if it's okay, because that's a really quick one to answer. Are we looking at CCTV? Yes, we are. It'll be obviously external CCTV. We've taken on board the comments from the last meeting regarding live monitoring of those cameras for existing arrangements. That was that. Now to respond to Councillor Barlow's questions. So I think the town council decision making, that's for them. So I'm not going to comment on that. In terms of Sidmouth, the couple of different elements with Sidmouth. So we have the Category A site, in fact, it's a new investment site in that instance outside the pool. I think it's well known that the town council indeed wrote into as part of the planning response, setting out their concerns. We have subsequently, myself, Doug and George, have met with the clerk, the chair and vice chair of the council, probably I'd say about a month or so ago, maybe longer, and sort of to better understood what their concerns were and how we could tweak the scheme. And it is only tweaking, it is still fundamentally in that same location, but looked at how we could tweak it regarding the alignment of the building, regarding the signage, regarding the public realm, and taken that on board, and gone back informally outside of the formal planning process, but went back informally to the clerk probably about 2 weeks ago on that. Likewise, we've gone back to LED, although LED hadn't objected to the planning application, but we've gone back to LED and notified them of the proposed changes, and we are now putting that new scheme back through planning, but that does mean that planning termination is now to take place until April, when we're expecting all of the others to be determined in March. So that's that site. In terms of the Sidmouth Town Council, there were also discussions regarding other sites. So yes, we've been discussing the Long Park site, and also the Sidbury site. So yeah, we're having those discussions at the moment, and in fact, Councillor Barlow, we're going to be going back to the clerk within the coming days, particularly on the Long Park one, because there's some issues that have arisen through looking at the title of that one.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. So I can't see any other hands from members. So for the purpose of the minutes, that was the agenda item relating to public toilets review update. I'll propose from the chair that we note that report. Are members of the forum happy to proceed on that basis? That's 3 yeses. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Debbie. Okay, so that now brings to an end the public part of our meeting, and I'd like to thank all those taking part, including any members of the public who have joined us today online. Can I now remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when this meeting is no longer being live streamed, and until then your comments will be live to the public. We're now about to move into part B